For an emerging economy like ours, the future undoubtedly rests on the financial service growth and expansion. To enlighten us on this, we have amongst us Dr. GangaDhar Dharba, an alumni of Conclave Institute of Politics and Economics. He holds a PhD in economics from GIPE, Mumbai, and has completed a postdoctorate in finance from the Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania. He is currently employed as the Executive Director with Nomura Securities, Mumbai. Prior to that, he worked at the Royal Bank of Scotland and Morgan Stanley in London, Indian School of Business, Hyderabad, National Stock Exchange of India Limited, Mumbai, National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, New Delhi, to name a few. Some of his research interests includes macroeconomic modeling, fixed income analytics, global financial markets, and central banking. He has also been a regular columnist for Financial Express, Economic Times, and Business Standard. I am sure we would all gain a lot from his valuable insights. On this note, sir, I leave the dice to him. Thank you.
Good afternoon, good morning, friends. Thanks for the introduction. One advantage of being introduced as an experienced person with wide range of experience is essentially saying the person lacks a bit of focus. Another way of saying is that this guy has been trying around many things. So, the downside of having a long introduction is saying that he's not really clear of what he wants to do. So, my CV clearly indicates that with an amazing regularity, every 3 years I've been switching not just the jobs, but the career paths itself. Spend time in academics, go to industry, then come back and spend time in academics, go to industry again. The upside of that is partly you try to experience or you try to assimilate the knowledge from two different worlds. Industry on the one hand, offering you to think about some problems of practical relevance, and then juxtapose that experience against a clear, consistent, articulated academic thought, and then try to see what we are learning and where we are going overall. So I hope some of the experience that I have learned over a period of time has been of some consequence. And today I can probably bring in some of that experience on board. I'm particularly privileged to, I particularly feel very honored to give a talk in an institution which is my alma mater that I cherish and respect a lot. And in particular, we talking in this particular hall has its own historical significance. Because much like many of the younger students in the hall, this hall has seen much better speakers and intellectuals than me. Over 30 years, I had an opportunity to watch with great amazement teachers like GangaDhar, Professor Raff, and stalwarts of the intellects standing here and lecturing. And strictly speaking, I don't think I belong in that league at all. Still, since you made me stand here and talk, I was actually asked Rajesh when he asked me that he told me, and this way, the first thing I asked is, isn't it better to do it in the lecture halls? Because I would get slightly intimidated standing on this particular hall. But okay, I'll give it a try. So hopefully, I won't be able to match the greatness of the scholars, but at least I'll try and get you the information that is relevant, if not the analysis, which is sufficiently deep. Yeah. Now, there's also as an introductory statement, I'd like to start with a small story. It is said that a boy from a village, when he left his house, he thought, some of you are permitted me to say a couple of sentences in Sanskrit. He says, Ahameva Pandita. He thought, I am the only one who know everything. So he started and went to a university. And then suddenly he realized, Aham cha Pandita. When he left the house, he thought, I know everything. And after some time, when he went to the university, he said, Aham cha Pandita. Okay, I also know something. And when he sees the world a little more, he said, "Hum na pandita." So he realized he's not a scholar at all because the world is far more complex. And my situation is a bit like that. Over a period when I came here, I thought I'm that smart guy. And once I got exposure to great teachers and great scholars, I realized, well, I can get somewhere in life, but not like these guys. These are very, very smart. And then when I went to industry, today I see the world far more complicated, and I can easily, get lost. However, an attempt should be made to understand the themes which are relevant. One of the themes that's given to me today is actually to speak about new horizons of financial services growth. There are many other topics I would have done a far better job because my expertise is much more specific, much more mathematical by learning in nature. But when this particular topic was given to me, then I took this as a challenge and as an opportunity to read and then try to assimilate in the context of the 15 years of work experience that I had with multinational financial organizations, both in London, New York, and many other places that I worked. So I thought I would bring in a little bit of color onto that in the present context of India. So with those initial remarks, let me start the lecture. Well, I won't call it a big lecture. Let's keep it a little interactive. You feel free to stop me. That doesn't mean I'm not prepared for the lecture. Generally, that is the trick people who don't prepare for the lecture do. Let's make it interactive. So, I'm going to keep it interactive. So, if some of you want to interject in between the lecture, that's fine. Otherwise, at the end of the talk, you can intervene and ask me questions. All right. The idea here is, I think the central theme for this particular talk, the way I understood is that, what is the linkage between the real economy and the financial services, and going forward, what is the future of financial services growth? In that context, I think one is the first fundamental point that you need to understand is the linkages between growth and financial services. The linkage by which I mean, or is financial services a derivative of the growth process? Does it lag behind the growth process, or does it a causal factor? That is financial sector industry, the growth of financial services, a necessary condition for real growth, or it's actually an offshoot of the growth process that itself comes out as a side effect of the growth process that you undertake. First of all, we need to think of this topic in a causal manner, that what is a cause and what is an effect. In another simple way of putting it is, suppose you move from a 5% growth to a 10% real growth. That has some consequences on the entire macroeconomy. Now, can the financial services be same between state where you have 5% growth and 10% growth? Obviously not. Now, the question is, at higher levels of income, for example, people might demand financial services as an additional service requirements. So then what happens is, financial services is actually a derivative of the underlying growth process. It's not actually causing it. But whereas on the other hand, if you want to move the economy from 5% to a double-digit growth, certain type of financial services are essential facilitators of that. So the first point in this context that we need to understand is the linkage between growth and financial services is almost always two-way process. It is certain type of financial services are essential to the real growth process, and certain type of financial services are outcome of the growth process. Are you with me on that? So that's the first point I would like to make. Then the second most important point is regulatory environment. We'll go through the details later, and also I think the presentation will be available with the organizers, so you don't need to write them. The second point is, in the context of growth and financial services, the regulatory environment plays a major role. The reason is, financial services industry is fundamentally about taking risk and getting return. The risk-return trade-off is the core fulcrum around which financial services industry grows. So when we talk about how does the financial services expected to grow, I think the issue is how does the economic agents, what is their risk preferences? How do they want to actually, what is the risk appetite? Would they like to be more risk-taking so that more and more instruments would come on? Or would people be far risk-averse? In which case, the certain type of scope for certain type of financial services instruments is not there, it is very limited. So, it is fundamentally related to society's economic agents' risk appetite, how the financial industry goes. That brings us, is it the case that it is completely related to, sorry, it's not mine. So, it's not like every private agent by themselves can do innovate, etc. In principle, yes. But the social requirements come in because of the regulatory environment. For example, the reason I'm saying all that is, for example, the global financial crisis that we have seen in 2007 is a major epoch in economic history because that has changed the way, the risk-taking nature of people in dealing with financial risks, and it has changed the way the governments look at financial services. And to what extent they are useful, to what extent they are good to have, to what extent they are necessary to have. So there are lots of discussions around that today than it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, it was thought financial services, the growth of financial services is essential and it fundamentally fuels the real growth. And that's the consensus, that's the belief. Post-financial crisis, post-global financial crisis, one realized that's not necessarily the case. Growth of financial services industry has its own side effects. The financial services industry could actually be growing for the requirement of certain type of agents in the society, typically high-income individuals. But the side effects of that could be detrimental to some other type of agents in the economy who are not part of the financial system. Right? I'm trying to generalize a particular fact that all of you know. Financial crisis, global financial crisis that we have seen was preceded by huge interest in derivative instruments, credit default swaps, collateral obligations, whatever equity and fixed income instruments that you could think of, all of them grew from 2004 to 2009 in a significant manner. Now, but once that particular crisis happened, the consequences of the crisis was felt across the board. All sections of the population got hit, thereby posing a challenge to the public policy that should the regulatory environment be more cautious or less cautiously optimistic about the growth of financial services. So regulators world over asking, are these products which represent the growth of the financial services, are they essential for the real growth? In what way they are contributing to the real growth? By which I mean agricultural growth or industrial growth. Or are they contributing to themselves? I.e., are we talking about growth of financial services for their own satisfaction, or are they playing an important intermediary function to promote the real growth and real welfare? These questions were never asked till the financial crisis occurred. The fundamental point being the belief, somewhere philosophically, the belief about market efficiency, that people started believing that capital markets are fundamentally efficient, so they would lead you to a Pareto superior or Pareto optimal solution. If I'm sure some of you know what's Pareto optimality, right? So, and I also trying to show off a little bit, my technical knowledge. So now people believe in markets, and one of the high priests of market efficiency, Alan Greenspan, actually promoted that as a philosophy till a great financial crisis happened. And after that, the thinking has changed. People started asking now, you need to establish, you cannot assume that growth of financial markets is fundamentally good always, or fundamentally superior. But you have to establish what aspect of the financial services growth contributes significantly and enhances the real growth is a proposition that needs to be separately established. So that is the concern where the regulatory environment started changing. The regulatory environment, when I say that, it could mean Dodd-Frank regulation in the US, Indian regulation in Europe, or the regulatory approaches within India. We will talk about some of those details in a minute. But broadly, regulatory environment started looking at finance industry or financial services with far more suspicion than earlier, before 2009. Just as an example, I'll give an example and then I'll move on. In 2007, I was working at 2008 and 2009, I was working at Royal Bank of Scotland in London. Our office was at Liverpool Street Station, and I was living in Canary Wharf, both are back in distance. After the crisis, Royal Bank of Scotland went down big time. So I got into a taxi, a black cab, and I was wearing my badge. The driver asked me, where do you want to go? Where do you work? I said, I work for Royal Bank of Scotland. He said, sorry, I won't take you. Please get out of the taxi. I thought it was more of a racism. I said, no, this is bad. I'm Indian, so why are you asking me? He said, no, it's nothing to do with racism. I won't take any employee of Royal Bank of Scotland. You have brought down the society a shame. Because, you know, it's like a $70 billion loss to the British taxpayer. So the guy said, please get out of my car, I won't live. So it was that bad. When the society per se started mistrusting the bankers, is an example of how much the financial services industry got hit because of the crisis, because of the dimension of the crisis is very bad. I was told things in New York are a little better, so they were more tolerant to the bankers. But in Europe, it was really bad for many years. And that's why the regulation, which is reflecting the aspirations of an average citizen, public regulations always that, actually started coming very harsh on the financial services industry. So, to summarize this at this point in time, before getting into the details, the point I wanted to make is regulatory environment facilitates certain type of financial services, but it also limits the growth for certain other types of financial services in the name of risk management, etc., etc. We will talk about further details. Now, the other thing is about the political environment, which is also very closely linked to the development of financial services. By which I mean, suppose when the Asian currency crisis occurred in the Asian countries, and I'm sure some of you are too young to know that, but Asian currency crisis in the mid-90s, around that time, the kind of government that we had in India, which had some, we are moving away from leftist ideology that guided for almost 20 years. We are moving into economic liberalized environment, but most of the intellectuals who are participating were still from the old world. At one level, all of us are leftists anyway. But I'm saying even otherwise, there was a streak of intellectual thinking in India that felt markets, open markets, could be dangerous to a society like India, which doesn't have social safety nets, etc., etc. And eventually you have that left-leaning tradition. It's kind of a welfare state kind of an ideology that existed. Now, how did that matter for financial services? Is an interesting linkage, which I'm trying to tell. Is when a particular epoch like the global financial crisis or Asian currency crisis happened, people said, we told you, markets can go wrong. And hence, let's not allow markets to grow. Because we are not in a position, we don't have an infrastructure. So the Asian currency crisis, it just stunted the entire capital convertibility plans. Capital convertibility in India was stopped during a very time when he was a deputy governor and governor subsequently. The entire legislation related to, or the regulatory policies related to foreign exchange markets, which is the capital convertibility, free capital flows, etc., were completely taken a different route because of the political environment in which we were actually staying. And of course, the pension reforms for a long time, which is not happening now, for a long time they were stopped because of the Congress government during the left support. The coalition government run by Congress with the left support, it's a recorded fact that left parties were against, even now they are against a lot of pension reforms that was suggested. Once the pension reform is, for example, stopped, or the capital convertibility is stopped, it has implications to the nature of the financial services industry that come up. Like, for example, currency derivative markets, options, futures, forwards, and the currency markets could not take off under that environment. Similarly, pension funds not being participating could not be further enhanced or developed because of the left party stance. Right or wrong, I don't want to tell. But basically, the political environment also can constrain growth of the financial services in a particular format. The corollary to that is when the political environment changes, as it has changed now, it has implications because of the policies that are pursued. It has implications to the growth of the financial services. So that was the second point. The third point is, of course, related to fiscal environment. The fiscal environment is a tricky, non-obvious point. I.e., if the focus of the government is to bring in some fiscal prudence, there are two ways of doing it. One is cutting the expenditures, another is expanding the revenue. The financial services play an interesting role in a very limited manner, which is, if your focus is on cutting expenditure, the implications of the financial services industry is only indirect and probably minimal. Whether the government, for example, reduces its expenditure, it's not automatic that the financial services industry will expand or contract. But if its objective is to increase the revenues, one of the things that is noticed is a significant part of the Indian economy is operating in non-formal sector. So the idea of financial inclusion with GangaDhar, Aadhaar, or mobile banking, etc., I'll speak a little bit about them later. The idea is to expand the tax base or bring in more population into formal financial system so that it will actually generate more tax revenues. So the approach, when it changes to from expenditure minimization to revenue maximization, one of the important tools for the government to expand the revenue is to formalize the system and a great deal of economic activity be brought under formal financial system. And then, by implication, a lot of financial instruments and services will start developing around that. So that has an implication to that. And finally, I think part of it I mentioned already is income distribution associated with the growth. So when either low growth or high growth, when a particular type of income distribution emerges, say typically it's across the section, suppose we are in a relatively poor environment, the requirement of financial savings in a higher order form is actually a luxury. I.e., many people might want to put the money in real estate and gold when they have a particular type of income distribution. But suppose as the incomes go up, the distribution also changes, higher end of the distribution, or with the increase in inequality, the demand for advanced financial services and savings will start going up. Agree with me? So, the idea is people become far more risk-taking. This is called the principle of increasing risk aversion. Increasing risk-taking with the income levels or with the wealth levels. There are a lot of, in consumption theory, there is a lot of work done showing the utility nature of the utility functions that we all postulate automatically has this particular idea that the demand for certain type of consumption changes. In the process, demand for certain type of financial savings also starts happening. So many years ago, we don't have even the number of instruments that we have today because the primary focus is actually to get to a decent consumption level, let alone fancy financial savings. Thank God we are today not in a consumption craving economy because we have, I think the economic growth process at least taken us out of the rationing, world in which we live. Now, as a result, in particular in the last 20 years, there is a significant rich middle class that emerged across the Asian countries, but in particular within India. And one of the things that the middle class is actually demanding, along with fancy automobiles, fancy electronic gadgets, etc. on the consumption side, along with that, they want to become much more funky about their financial savings. They want to do it in a more educated manner, by looking at the global financial products, they're investing, they started learning to invest. So as the growth process moves income distribution in a different manner, the demand for financial savings actually increases. An interesting research question here, which I don't have an answer, is what kind of changes in inequality patterns in India, for example, are indeed causing the demand for what kind of financial services? I think that's a nice question to ask and can be analyzed with the national sample survey data that we have, or the RBI data that we have, where you can actually correlate and see a particular inequality is in the income distribution. Is it causing a particular type of increase in demand for financial services? I'm sure the firms, the financial services firms, would be doing surveys to project their own growth on in what format changes in income distribution and actually cause. But that's another factor that actually determines the growth of financial services. Now, that's what I meant. Basically, market strategy, organizational operating models, and risks. Basically, that's a single statement which summarizes various kinds of dimensions of requirements for the growth of financial services. Now, when we talk about financial services industry, you have to be careful and you have to distinguish about three aspects. These are important. Are we talking about financial products? Are we talking about financial markets? Or are we talking about financial institutions? The difference is the following. Financial products, when you talk about, we're talking about various kinds of products, like a unit-linked policy, life policy is a product. Forward currency, forward contracts is a product. Currency futures is a product. When we talk about markets, we are talking about equity markets versus debt markets, spot versus derivative markets, or basically equity versus currency versus bond markets. And when we talk about institutions, we are talking about banks, non-bank financial institutions, hedge funds, who do highly risk taking, banks which are supposed to take relatively less risk taking. So we are talking about institutions. We are also talking about regulatory institutions, that is SEBI versus RBI, Securities Exchange Board versus Central Bank, etc., etc. Regulatory institutions as well. Why the distinction is important is very often when we analyze, the society's risk appetite, we typically talk about products. But when those products need to develop, you need markets, and it's not really clear very often the society is, the policy or regulation is very clear on this. Let me give you an example. In every conference organized by the government last year or year before, celebrating 25 years of SEBI's success, one of the highlights that is presented was India has the largest turnover of single stock futures, which is a derivative instrument in the world. So our national stock exchange and Bombay stock exchange volumes and the number of retail investors in India competes with one of the most liquid markets in the world. And every finance minister, most of the time, he celebrated the success of capital markets with an indication that equity market derivatives are very, very successful in India. Now, but at the same time, the government as a policy never encouraged bond market derivatives. We, for example, don't have a very active interest rate futures market, but we have a very active equity futures, index futures market. So, similarly, the currency futures markets and currency derivative markets was not allowed to bloom or be successful. Banks were told not to invest in currency derivatives beyond a point. They were position limits. So the paradox is the following: that you are celebrating the success of a particular product, like options market, futures market, in the equity context, but you are saying, well, we want derivatives and speculation in equity, but we don't want derivatives and speculation in debt. So that means the public policy is actually favoring equity market growth, financial services and equity market of a particular type, but it is not allowing the same to succeed in foreign exchange and bond markets. There could be a particular, I'm not saying whether that is incorrect or correct, but in theory, when we are taught economic theory, the so-called arrow models, due to Conclave', there is no distinction between a debt or an equity. A security market is a security market is a security market. Yet in the public policy, you actually distinguish, you prefer one versus the other. Now, there are reasons for that. I mean, very often central bankers would say, if the equity market volatility goes up by 10%, I don't lose sleep. Famously, once said, if the equity market goes up or goes down, I don't lose the sleep. But if the currency market goes up or goes down, I am worried. Because currency is seen as a public policy variable, right? Unfortunately, it is also seen as an indicator of national pride. But that's incorrect. I mean, currency is just another price. It should be seen as another price. But the government see, suddenly if the currency becomes depreciated, they would think something is going wrong. And hence they build in certain biases in the policy making, saying that certain type of markets we want to develop, certain type of markets we want to keep them undeveloped. So in particular, the positions on bond markets is a classic case of that. That's why I distinguish it as a difference between a product and a market and an institution. The institution thing is even more serious because when a particular crisis happens, you try to attribute the failure or success to a particular agent in the economy. That's a human tendency. You don't say, for example, a global financial crisis happened as part of the what Professor Schumpeter called the process of creative destruction. It's a natural outcome of a capitalist economy to face crisis. Of course, there is something wrong in an economy if you face a 100-year crisis every other year. You remember there's this, I think Katrina, right? Not our actress, I mean the cyclone. They said Katrina happened once in 100 years event. And then the next year it happened some other way, another once in 100-year event. So if crisis happen with amazing regularity, there is something wrong in the system. However, the point I'm saying is we would look for institutions to blame. And when we blame that, a financial crisis happens, we actually look for certain type of financial institutions to be actually the culprit. And hence, we would like to control that. The point I'm trying to make is, in this context is, financial crisis, happening in financial crisis actually had an implications on the entire hedge fund industry. Certain countries have taken a position that they will not encourage high frequency hedge fund traders. More closer to what I do on a daily basis, for example, there is something called flash crash. I don't know how many of you have heard of it in financial markets. It happened much later than the global financial crisis. Or have you seen a book by Michael Lewis on Flash Boys? Where traders, high frequency traders, people who build mathematical algorithms, like myself and my colleague, you build computer-based mathematical algorithms to trade stocks in an infinite, almost infinite pace. So there was a sudden fall of the market and sudden recovery of the market in the US a couple of years ago that was attributed to these program traders or the so-called black box traders. The point I'm trying to say is that that particular crisis was attributed falsely or otherwise to a particular group of agents, which I call institutions. Now, they are not, for example, in India after that, the Indian policy regulation has changed in such a way that it was very, very cautious in allowing high frequency traders in the market. So that, for example, is an example of how in financial services, providing institutions are controlled based on the experiences felt by the society and reflected in the public policy resolution. So, broadly, in fact, my lecture is that I'm done. However, let's go through a little bit details on the top of this. Basically, the basic theme that I wanted to present in whatever time I left is basically in this slide. The financial industry, the financial services growth is linked to the real growth in a causal manner. Either the financial services are actually essential inputs into a growth process, or a financial services industry is an outcome of the kind of growth process that we really want, or it could be both. And on the top of this, now so far what I presented is about internally within the domestic economy, how financial services are expected to grow. By the way, I hope you are getting it already. I'm sure you are getting a sense of it. I am not presenting the numbers on what happened from 1992 till now, how much financial services industry went, which is the insurance numbers, etc. Those are too standard and that's too boring. What I wanted to concentrate on the conceptual framework in which how you should read the finance industry's growth and what are the conceptual underpinnings under which growth actually happens and how it happens, and the political economy of that and the regulatory aspect of that. Now, one aspect here, which is an interesting recent development, is Indian economy got integrated with the rest of the world for sure, for good or for bad, but we are now part of a global integrated world, economically integrated world. And there are some technological economic factors as well. I'll talk about that in a minute. But what we know is that our economic activity is significantly linked through exports, imports, etc. into the world economy. So one of the offshoots of that, where the trading linkages and economic linkages happen, is the requirement for our producers and consumers to trade to not only commodities, which is export imports, but also trading capital, which is export import of capital services. And in particular, when the public policy is not permitting, for good reasons, a free flow of capital in two circumstances. To the extent, when the government or public policy permits you to freely trade in capital, not commodities, commodities trade is there anyway, but if suppose you can export the dollars, or import the dollars, I export the rupee and import the dollars, or whatever combination, you can trade in currency very freely, you require certain type of financial services industries. Come on. Whereas, for example, today you can't do that. The capital convertibility is not done in India still. It's not complete capital convertibility. There is only partial capital convertibility. As soon as, for example, one example that I give you is in the currency market, because there is a capital control, sort of a partial implicit capital controls, a particular kind of a product will come up, a particular institutions will come up. For example, in India, you are not allowed to trade, foreign institutions are not allowed to trade currency forwards, currency derivatives. Right? Even domestic institutions are also allowed to trade only partially. As a result, what happened? A new market called non-deliverable forward market developed. It is based in London, Singapore, New York, Hong Kong. So what happens there? People actually trade currency. That is rupee dollar, for example. You can trade rupee dollar in Singapore without the control of the Reserve Bank of India. That's kind of a free satellite market. These are called offshore markets. Onshore markets, for example, are what you do within domestic forward, currency forwards, currency futures, which are traded on exchanges. But there is something called offshore market, where, for example, 18 to 20 international investment banks, multinational investment banks, they are members of the club, and they trade with each other, rupee dollar. And what happens is they don't settle in rupees. For example, a rupee dollar rate is 50 a year ago, and it is expected to go to 60. One guy wants to get 60, another guy wants to get 65. They take a betting position, and they settle the entire transaction, not in rupees, but in dollars. So that's why the market is called non-deliverable forward market. A deliverable forward market is a market which happens in Mumbai, where you actually exchange rupees for dollars. Right? You settle it in deliverable currency. Now, the central bank regulation preventing a lot of corporate, lot of free speculation in the currency derivative market, how it created this anomaly. That's the example which I'm trying to give you. I hope you're getting it. It is, I hope I'm clear actually. As the corporate sector starts expanding into multiple markets, it requires to hedge its positions. And let's say Reliance, for example, requires something like $20 million every day. The minimum $20 million transaction every day to hedge its positions. Because it's a huge petrochemical company, it is dealing across the globe, the revenue streams are in dollars, expenditures are in rupees. So it needs to hedge its currency risks. Now, if you are not allowed to do that within the system, it allows foreign institutional investors like Nomura, like HSBC, or like Goldman Sachs, Dharba, to actually create a dollar hedge in Singapore. As a result, what happened is, as a result of the policy of the government to watch or allow partial decontrol of currency, the satellite markets are developed, not just for rupee alone, about rupee dollar rate, Brazilian currency, Chinese currency, etc., Korean currency. These are the markets for which such a new market got developed and a new product like non-deliverable forwards happen. Suppose now we think as a thought experiment. Suppose the Indian government tomorrow decides they will make capital convertibility happen. So that is, all institutions, foreign, domestic, can freely trade in Mumbai of the rupee dollar. Then what happens to the offshore market? It disappears. So which is what happened with Mexico. It used to have a very strong offshore market in New York, but it disappeared once the Mexican currency is pegged to the US dollar, which is almost perfect example of capital convertibility. So the regulation, as I mentioned earlier, and along with the global market integration. Of course, if you have Zimbabwe, which is not much of a trade linkage with the rest of the world, I'm giving an example. Zimbabwe, which they're playing cricket against India. There's no disrespect to them, but if they are not connected to the global trade, the product market integration doesn't happen, financial market integration also doesn't happen. Whereas a powerful economy like India, the point I'm trying to say is, in the real trade, in the commodity trade, and in the global economy, if we are becoming an important economy, the requirement for our currency to be traded freely will increase. And if the public policy doesn't support that for whatever welfare reasons, certain type of instruments and markets, financial markets, develop. The global transformation in terms of linkages is one classic example of that. So, this I think partly we have covered, but a little more detail on the regulatory environment is regulation became increasingly concerned about mitigating risk. And that has generated implications for certain type of financial services growth. One of the examples which I can give you on that and conclude is banks which were universal banks, or banks which were actually collecting deposits from its depositors, started increasing massive treasury operations. Treasury operations would be providing, security services, etc. One of the problems that was felt after the financial crisis is, do the depositors know what the banks are doing with their money? Banks basically said, don't worry, all that we need to give you is your return. As long as we are giving you your return, you don't really need to know whether I invest in a sovereign government bond or equities or the collateralized debt obligations, etc. But the problem became so much that disintermediation, that is, the lack of complete knowledge of a depositor on where his money is going. We don't know. All that we know, for example, today we put the money in State Bank deposit, and there is a common guarantee as far as the government ownership is concerned. So we are saying our money is safe, irrespective of whether the money is invested in spot market, forward market, complicated derivatives market, globally, locally, we don't care, because we know it's not guaranteed by the government because of the public ownership. But think of a situation where there is no guarantee by the government, which was the case with Scotland, for example, before 2007, 2008. Then RBS has actually taken substantial amount of deposits from everybody, from, as they say, from Scottish widows to black cap drivers. It has taken the deposits and invested in extremely complicated, what are called collateralized mortgage obligations. They have very complicated risks. So without understanding that, so that industry took a massive boom of housing derivatives, etc. But when it came crashing, it had implications to the money of the depositors, who in the first place did not know where the money is going. So that's an example where there was a disconnect. But when the fall came, the entire industry disappeared. So the point I'm making is certain types of regulations driven by certain type of global events can have some serious implications to the finance industry. Today, people are actually now looking at all those complex financial intermediation services that we examine people are asking questions whether any of those are required at all. In this context, I will refer most of you to take a look at Raghunath Rajan's lecture at the Jackson Hole lecture, famous lecture, where he gave around 2005. He said how the world is becoming excessively risk-taking, how the societies are becoming excessively risk-taking. The famous guys like Larry Summers, Alan Greenspan ridiculed Raghunath Rajan, saying that he was talking, like a communist. But in 2 years down the line, Raghunath Rajan was proved right, and Larry Summers and others were proved totally wrong. And the entire collateralized debt obligations market, that entire industry, pretty much brought down not just the global financial system, it had brought down even the real economies to a significant recession, through which we are now recovering. I think that's a very important lecture where he argues under what conditions the policy makers and the society at large became excessively risk-taking, thinking that there is a gold rush and that people have invented, and that did not happen, and the requirement for watching growth. Global integration aggravated the crisis. Regulatory environment post the crisis started realizing risk management is absolutely essential in actually developing financial markets industry. I am not saying the future of the financial services industry is going to be bleak. I am not saying that. It will be as good as it is required, but it will be conditioned on the risk appetite of the society as reflected in the risk management of the regulators. So the regulator perspective has changed. Another interesting example is there is something called OTC market, over-the-counter market, which basically is there is a buyer calls up a seller and says, I need $100 million trade, I want to buy $100 million currencies. Then another guy says, okay, I'll sell 100 million, so we both exchange. We know each other. The price at which we agree is negotiable between two of us. Is broadly the simplified version of the OTC market. Entire global fixed income markets, that is bond markets, illiquid corporate bond markets, etc., all of them are done over the phone. They're called telephone market. Though nobody uses telephones today, they all use an electronic screen, but they talk to each other and renegotiate the deal. The specific characteristic of this deal is, if two of us are actually trading, the deal terms are not known to the third party. Only two of us know. The negotiation process is bilateral. Compare this with a stock exchange, which has what is called a limit order book. It means the price of a reliance is visible to all of us on a BSE screen or an NSE screen. So that's what is called a multilateral dealing system, where all of us trade against a screen. We don't know who the counterparty is. So it's called an anonymous limit order book, standardized limit order book. It's actually closer to, some of you have already done price theory too. In those days, in my time, it was called channel equilibrium. So the Walrasian auctioning, the Walrus Tathorma process is actually your limit order book today. So you're actually trading against the culmination of all demands and supplies against that. An interesting observation here is, during the financial crisis that we have experienced in 2007 to 2009, while the global fixed income markets collapsed, that is the OTC markets, all the dealing system collapsed, aggravated the credit crisis, the equity markets did not collapse. That is, equity markets reflected the crisis by going down, but the trading, clearing, settlement, all that system remained intact. The reason being, it is understood that the OTC market structure is actually, which facilitated growth of finance industry in fixed income, large trades, fixed income markets, that is bond markets. It has caused a lot of problems in terms of, by allowing people to cut deals which are not known. And the regulators are actually not seeing what exactly is the kind of pricing mechanism, what is the risk management mechanism, etc. So in response to that, now, for example, Dodd-Frank regulation, that is in US, Senator Frank's regulation, it's called Dodd-Frank regulation. It is not forcing all the markets, the standardized products, to move into an exchange traded environment so that the trading terms, trading settlements are extremely transparent to the regulators as well as public at large. That has a serious consequence to the financial services industry, in the products, in the markets, in the institutions, as I talked about. So, going forward, I think electronic markets, or what is called e-markets, are going to develop much more. Because the society at large, and the regulations in particular, are favoring electronic market, communication-based markets, rather than individual, off the market transactions. As a result, I think the development of financial services in those three aspects will happen more electronically and less manually. Also, of course, the recent crisis again, is created some particular path to about the whole problem of excessive leverage, which is I already spoke. Rajesh Jackson also talks about that, which is should the system, what should be the system? How much leverage you need to take. I don't know how many of you know what is the leverage. Basically it means how much you need to borrow to fund. How much your own funds you bring, how much you need to borrow. Can you, for example, bring in 10 rupees or $10 and borrow $1,000, and you're running an operation on $1,000 with your own capital 10. In which case, what's your incentive mechanism to actually do the due diligence with other people's money? Basically, leverage is about playing with other people's money and how much you need to be allowed, etc. By the way, while we are talking in the context of financial services growth, you keep in mind this is a very, very deep problem. Who decides how much risk society should take? It's a challenging problem. Who decides that? Do you expect the governments to tell, a risk appetite of 6% risk and 8% return is good enough? Can we say the government should target a 6% volatility of stock market? Who decides that? We don't know. Should it be a total a free market scenario where economic agents like you and me have the freedom to choose our own risk appetite? Or the society would say, or the governments would say, look, you cannot do beyond this. Currently, it's a serious, it's a serious discussion in modern day democracies, if you ask me. I don't think it receives sufficient attention. But I think at some stage, in discussing about growth of financial services, you need to understand how much of risk, how much of return, the risk return frontier that society at large is willing to take is a question that fundamentally drives the growth of financial services industry. I think very often what happens is this is where the problem of regulatory overreach starts coming into picture. When governments are actually looking at certain market failures, the first tendency of the governments would is to restrict the markets. Because if you have no markets, there is no market risk. The easiest way to control markets market risk is to kill the market. So we don't have a market, so hence we don't have currency crisis. But that's not a big deal. Even Zimbabwe doesn't have a financial crisis because they don't have financial markets to deal with. But the real challenge is actually how do you create a risk management system that will allow the markets and innovations to grow, but will create the safety nets, that will allow you, some kind of protection in terms of market failure. That I think is a real challenge. That's why when Indian regulators talk about, regulating or stifling markets in the fear of risk, it is a primitive way of approaching it. The modern sophisticated way of approaching is actually creating appropriate risk management systems. One classic example is once I remember one of the senior central bankers asked me, will introduction of interest rate futures challenge the sovereignty of monetary policy? So he said, the central bank governor said, if I introduce interest rate futures, will my ability to control monetary policy, will it go down? It sounds a very nice question, right? If interest rate futures is a derivative instrument on interest rates, if the entire market is betting in, speculating in that, how will a central bank governor can control interest rates to target many other things? On the face of it, it looks a genuine question. But look at the fallacy of that. Which is the most developed interest rate market in the world? It is US. The American interest rate derivative market US Treasury market trades something like $3 trillion a day. It is the deepest market. Who is the most powerful central banker in the world? It is the Federal Reserve Chairman. So, the market being more developed, the financial services being more developed, in no way impedes on the independence of the economy of the central bank. If anything, as they jokingly say, a US Federal Reserve Chairman makes a speech, the whole world reacts to it. It actually enhances the what is called the transmission mechanism. It enhances the transmission mechanism of the central banker when you have sufficiently deep financial industry. But what is essential is a risk management system. I.e., if there is a problem, if people are taking significant amount of risk, they need to back up with significant amount of capital. You have to show that your depositors' money is not unfairly lost, so that gains are private, losses are public, kind of a syndrome will not happen. And that's where risk management is happening, big time. We already spoke about fiscal credit. Now, social and demographic factors, I'll just take 2 more slides and I'll conclude. Social and demographic factors are very, very important because this is a much abused term of late, which is the demographic period, etc. As the society becomes a particular age profile, people would like to get into some type of financial institutions, financial instruments, and that in turn will generate demand for certain financial services. On this front, clearly India is standing at the threshold of a great possibility of financial services. I.e., many financial products are demand because of the nature of the demographic challenge that we are actually looking at. A great deal of people like you would provide, are expected to provide demand for financial services growth. There is one more point I need to make, which is on the technology. Now, technology is allowing us to do certain type of transactions, financial transactions, which are much easier to do now than otherwise. For example, one of the topics that Rajiv Kumar yesterday mentioned was on this JAM concept, Jan Dhan Yojana, Aadhaar, and mobile banking. Those 3 together is the way the governments are trying to, actually encourage, and the technology, significant improvements in technology, as reflected in the Aadhaar scheme, Aadhaar program, is actually facilitating it. And technology makes transactions easier. But keep in mind, the social welfare question is slightly different from the technological feasibility question. The fact that it is easy to do doesn't necessarily mean it should be done for the benefit of the society. There are many things that we can easily do, but doesn't mean that we need to do it. So, in conclusion, what I want to say is, financial services growth, like any other sector's growth, is interlinked to the local economy as well as the global economy. It is driven by demographic factors as well as technological factors as a feasibility. But what we need to be careful is the behavioral aspect of it. That is, what kind of financial products need to come up? How the society should innovate in the finance space? To what extent it should be innovated? Allowed to innovate. Who decides? What should be the innovation process is? What kind of innovations are encouraged? What kind of innovations public policy doesn't encourage? These are the deeper questions that we need to ask in the context of financial growth of financial or the future of financial services. I think if we find some answers to them, then we will have a vision on how financial services industry in this country will go. Do not look at the number of, whether it is health insurance, pension, or whatever. The fundamental question is about what is the nature of the growth, what is the nature of the risk appetite that the society needs to take. That is where the agreement is required, and that is what will drive in the ultimate analysis the future of the financial services industry. Thank you very much. There are questions about it.
The session is open for questions.
So, thank you for the clarification. So, as I read in articles, companies of financial securities are optimistic about India. So, I want to know what are the Nomura policies to go about it. And so, my second question lies in, as we see now, Indian market are, increasing their linkages with the world. Let it be the introduction of international stock exchange in Gujarat, or increase in full capital account convertibility, or increase in foreign those or complex derivatives coming to India. So my point here is, if there is a financial crisis now, how vulnerable will we become with time? With more linkages with the world. Last time the linkage was less, but what will be the risk?
I didn't get the first question.
My first question is what are your policies as a company to go about in India? Uh, you know, how will you going to invest or general use?
Still not clear, but I'll answer the second question first. The second question is about consider internationalization, or what I call jokingly, it's like a Wimbledonization of the financial markets. In Wimbledon, English provides the platform, but there is not a serious about the English player still, of course, play until they came up. For 50 years, it was all Americans and Europeans and what have you. So you just provide the platform and get the recognition for it, which is what Wimbledon tends to do. In a similar way, international financial centers in India, like Gujarat, International Stock Exchange, it provides a platform for you to get recognized and become, attract the capital flows in and out of the system. Now, will that have side effects in terms of the prices? What's the question, the spirit of the question? Answer is yes, because financial markets are fundamentally a zero-sum game. You cannot, for example, gain out of the financialization or globalization of financial services and say, well, I want only the upside, but I can't do the downside. The only way you can actually do that is by creating appropriate hedges in terms of the financial crisis. And that essentially is related to risk management. But to answer your question, yes, there is a significant demand for creating international financial centers, like in Mumbai, in Gujarat. I think it's called GIPE, right? Yeah. So those centers are required because of the geographical location, the language, the development of technology, the numerical abilities of the talent of the population that exists. All of them are favoring creation of such centers for global capital flows to come and go. Under, of course, a very, very liberal public policy environment. To that extent, we get all the upside. But to that extent, we also get the downside when the flows start moving much more faster. Here, just an example I want to give you. When the global economies are actually doing very well, because of the asset substitution effects, the flows can go down. Now, under that simple portfolio diversification kind of logic that we learn in classrooms, suppose if the global economy is doing bad, when the American economy is in recession, would you expect, because Indian economy is doing high return, money should come to us? But that doesn't happen. In real world, what happens when a major crisis hits Western European or what we call the Anglo-Saxon economies, the risk appetite of all the investment banks or the shareholders of the investment banks go down. So they are all given instructions. For example, at Morgan Stanley, where I used to work, when the US economy started getting into the recession, everybody was told, remove the investments from East Asia. When Asia is actually doing double-digit return. So the usual risk-return trade-off that we learn doesn't work because something else changes. So we need to be exposed to all those international vagaries when this happens. But as far as the finance centers are concerned, view them as like platforms. It doesn't mean that the money is actually getting invested in India. It could even be just coming in and going, right? So there is some benefits with that, but the associated risks are also as real. The first question I'm not getting, we'll take it offline. Last one later. I'm not something very anymore.
We are moving against time, so we'll just take one more question.
Hello. Hello, my name is Shantanu from Ferguson College. Yeah, so you talked about the whole best voice and high frequency trading basically. So there was this article recently where Reliance is trying to set up optic fiber cables and trying to introduce HFT in India. So what are your views basically about HFT in general, and if it is introduced in India, what are your views on high frequency trading?
Yeah, I mean, I'm constrained by the fact that I work for a firm and in that specialized role. So my views should be interpreted as totally personal. And I'm not talking on behalf of Nomura. With this caveat, I think I can say anything now. I think HFT is HFT is, by the way, high frequency trading. It's a term for that. There is a technology aspect and there is a behavioral aspect. The point I think that is being discussed currently is, if you see it as a technology aspect, it's perfectly fine. If you see it as a behavioral aspect, there are some social policy questions. That is, retail investors might lose out to all the institutional investors when a high frequency trading is required. For example, you mentioned about fiber optics. One of the, you'll be surprised, between New York and Chicago, a few years ago, they have actually funded $1 billion research to send signals at the speed of light. It's a pure technology, physicists, engineers involved. Who funded it? It's all the investment banks funded it. So the point is, because they thought if each of them can be ahead of the other in the queue, the financial transactions can happen much more effectively. So the competition actually generated technology innovation in that sense. And the financial competition generated pure technology innovation. Now, in India, the worry is the following. That's why I gave many lectures on this. One of the interesting examples I always give is the Pune-Bombay Express Highway. We have, which I am taking now to go home. The express highway should the society invest in express highway? As a technology, it's great. It's as a traveling technology, it's good. But because of express highway facilitates 150 kilometers per hour travel, the mathematical probability of accidents is high. Right? If you travel at 20 kilometers on Jogeshwari Link Road, there is no hope that you will get hit by a car. Because the car won't move. You're traveling like bumper to bumper, it's great. Whereas on an express highway, the scope for accident is high. So the society's trade-off is the increase in probability of an accident and the ability to travel fast. The trading is exactly the same. You cannot think of high frequency trading is like an express highway. Whether you want to trade on it or not is a society's thing. In India, as with all of the policy, we are cautiously optimistic about introducing that. By the way, the high frequency trading is introduced, it's monitored, and it is put under much bigger surveillance by SEBI than otherwise. The worry is that the global market level, we are not there yet. Because we don't trade that fast, we don't trade as many volumes as in, for example, in Chicago or in New York. So to answer your question, high frequency trading is the new kid on the block as far as capital market reforms are concerned. SEBI is actually evaluating, how much it should encourage. So far, I think, touch wood, we don't have major crashes happen because of high frequency trading. Some of us are actually, I strongly support because that gives me employment. Some of us are actually in the jobs because of high frequency. Of course, I work on global markets, not on Indian market. So, to answer your question, that is a major technological innovation. Whether it is changing the behavior of the people because there is a technology is something that we need to see. Alright? Thank you very much.
I would like to thank Dr. Dharba for his precious time on the topic. Sir, as a token of appreciation and gratitude, we would like to present to you a memento and a sample. And also a copy of the annual magazine put up by the editorial board of our college, Red Plus. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. We will now move on to the next session of the day.
I would request all of you to settle down. We will now move on to our next session. Could I please request the audience to settle down? In this session of Economic Conclave 2015, we address a topic of great relevance: infrastructure development as a vehicle of growth. The fact that today the electoral promise has evolved from Roti Kapra Makan to Bijli Sarak and Pani underlines the importance of infrastructure in the governmental agenda. However, the paramount question remains: will India resolve legal bottlenecks, bureaucratic hurdles, and address contentious issues related to land acquisition to develop a sound infrastructure? To answer this pertinent question and enlighten us on the topic, we welcome Mr. Hari Sankaran, Vice Chairman and Managing Director of Infrastructure Leasing and Financial Services Limited. With a master's degree from the London School of Economics and Political Science, he joined IIFS Limited as Chief Economist, and over the years has been instrumental in developing significant infrastructure project development business portfolio for the company. With his vast experience in heading various project development and financing departments of governmental bodies, Mr. Sankaran has spearheaded the commercialization of infrastructure projects in India. Sir, we are honored to have you with us, and I now request you to come up on stage and address the audience.
Thank you. If I sound a bit disjointed, please forgive me. I spent 4 hours of sleep coming in from overseas and coming from Bombay to Mumbai. I used to be a student at Bombay Institute in 1981, and doesn't change that much from what I've seen so far. I met some of my old compatriots. One is Rajesh, who is now the director. And the second one is your Bursa, or registrar. And I'm told there are a few more. I just met some people also, so a few more around. But it's an interesting time because in 1981, which is approximately 10 years before most of you were born, this part of the world is very different, extremely different. And what you see today, for example, is there is no comparison. To give you a simple example, to go from Pune, I had some family in Bombay in those days, to Bombay was typically at least a 2-3 day affair. You didn't really think of going to Bombay unless you wanted to spend a weekend there. I fly to New York and come back in a single day. In 20 years, I'm able to go to New York by a 12 o'clock flight. I sleep 16 hours in a flight, which, as you can imagine, in my life is rather scarce amount. So I enjoy that flight. I sleep for 16 hours. I work for 7-8 hours, maybe 4 or 5 meetings in New York. I come back, perhaps the same aircraft, I don't know, and I fly back. And I think it's a fantastic equation. I get 32 hours of sleep for 7 hours of work. Unthinkable in 1981. I remember when I left Bombay, I went to an unreserved compartment from Nomura to Chennai, with my folks here. And I had to go unreserved because I didn't have the ability at that time to go to a kiosk and make an advance booking. Or maybe I did, and they didn't have tickets, it was unreserved. So I went unreserved. I had this big red suitcase, I still remember, filled with stuff that I then started. And I stood on the platform. The train comes. I see this incredibly overcrowded, unreserved compartment. I'm not sure what to do. Somebody asked me, what is on the platform for? I said, I need to get into this compartment. He says, jump in, jump in. So in I go in, and I'm a small guy in those days. Picks me up, and I'm shot somewhere in the compartment, and my bag is disappeared. We traveled that night, and those upper tiers of the compartment apartment. And I still remember some 8 of us all crouched there. Below me, 4, 5 guys in the corridor between the berths, people standing around that. It was damn packed. And there was food being passed about, there was conversations, somebody was singing, all this happened. Suddenly I was told to get off the berth, come down, which I did. I was pushed through the crowd. I was made to stand outside, holding on to this rail of the apartment. And I was told that it's not good for my health to be so crouched in the unreserved for such a long period of time without taking some fresh air. And it seemed to me that that was a world of great consideration. We don't have that consideration anymore in this world. Somewhere around Rainbow, I still remember that compartment was leaving because I was meant to stop in Andhra somewhere. So I was turfed off that compartment and I'm now on the station platform at 4 o'clock in the morning, far away from Chennai, wondering what I'm going to do as a student, no money in my pocket, huge red bag which had followed me. And another train comes along. And the station master says, get on this train and take it to Chennai. Eventually. That's what happened. I got to Chennai. That world has changed. And that world has changed for good. It doesn't matter whether you like it or dislike it, whether you remember it fondly or not. That world has changed. And 2 fundamental things have changed that. So whereas in the 18th century trade was the whole point of commerce, and your ships and big economies going after land. Then you had manufacturing. Then you had communication, which is 20th century phenomena. 21st century is information technology. It has changed the world dramatically. It is going to change the 21st century to a point of non-recognition. It already has in many different ways. And I want to use the theme of infrastructure and growth to postulate 3 fundamental, should I say, premises, which we need to actually get our heads around. Early days, but we need to understand it. And we've already seen the consequences of not understanding it. The first premise is that I don't think that government in its current form can survive for much longer. It can neither meet the aspirations of people, nor can it conduct the affairs of public policy and regulation in its current format. It has to change dramatically. Let me link this up with a technology that we are introducing, in fact, which makes every instrument in the home and outside the home interoperable. Which means that I can use a TV as an interactive device. And I can go from a TV to my handheld phone to an iPad to anything I want. I can talk to any device I wish to using that platform. Think about government now. I can put money in the TV. I can get a purse for that person through the TV, through your cell phone, through your iPad, through your computer. I don't need bank accounts. I don't need millions of people sitting in government transmitting my pension. Actually, I don't need government at all. Imagine what that means. Take another example. I don't need to go to a hospital. A hospital can come to me. There is a very remote tribal village where we work, in Tripura. And people in this audience raise their hands over Tripuras. This is exactly what I also had. I didn't know if Tripura was about 25 years ago. If you go via Bengal, Assam, around the hump of Bangladesh, and go beyond Bangladesh, it's one of our states of India, backward and beyond. In 1988, 80% of Tripura's population was tribal. 20% were Bangladeshis and or Bengalis or Assamese. In 2015, this year, 80% of Tripura are not indigenous, are not tribal. They're from Bangladesh, from Bengal, Assam, and other parts of the country of India. in less than 25 years, 80% tribal has become a 20% minority. There is no way government can even think of addressing this challenge. Infrastructure perhaps can give you an opportunity to address it. Certainly growth can make it acceptable. But the only way to actually go and do something which is substantive in trying to integrate these parts of our society is through ICT of the type of government. We work there in a tribal village in the forest. We've taken Anandai Hospital from Madurai in Tamil Nadu for telemedicine application, because in that particular tribe, because of their particular situation, they have very severe eye problems. And for telemedicine, they're able to provide a service. Based on infrastructure called telemedicine, we provide a service by which we've been able to eliminate 99% of the incidents of this specific problem of eye health that this tribal population faces in Tripura. It is approximately 4 hours drive from Agartala. It is approximately 4 hours or 4-day journey from Bombay to get to Agartala in the current configuration. ICTs changed the world dramatically. We no longer need government the way it is. We no longer need a bank the way it is. We no longer need the markets the way they are. We can change all this. And we can change it to the benefit of communities which are not easily accessible in the current structure of government, countries, economies, and political economies. Change the dimensions a little bit more. I've been arguing for a long time that extremism, whether of the Naxalite variety, or Christians, or Hindus, or Muslims, are all actually born out of a lack of access. Single biggest lack of access, quality education. It doesn't matter who you are. You're extremist because you haven't got the exposure that you and I have got, which allows us to invest in keeping the system going the way it is. That system hasn't delivered for you the value of the goods that you need to see. This lack of access is not a real problem. There's a bunch of stuff that ICT can provide. Therefore, the political dimensions of ICT structured economies, politics, financial systems is dramatic. In Kenya, there's an interesting slum which I visited a couple years ago, 3 years ago. There's a kid there who went to school. His family comes from the slum. His future was in the slum. His parents were pretty emancipated. They were working as domestic help in an expat's home. And they began to invest in his education because he was a bright kid. Goes to school, passes very successfully. And they find that this kid has a promise beyond the ordinary of that slum and other kids in the slum. So this kid goes to college. They're still domestic help. They somehow manage to save their money, put their kids to school, and to college. The kid's now a BCom, or the equivalent of a college grad. You would imagine that there is some scheme, some method by which this guy will get a job. 2 years pass, no job. Frustration is built. A 21-year-old kid with no job, no prospects, maybe access to television, who knows, begins to have all of his great dreams frustrated. Joins Boko Haram. Was a Christian, turns to a Muslim, becomes a Boko Haram. I don't know how many of you know about Boko Haram. This was an extreme organization in Nigeria. This is Kenya. Joins the Boko Haram in Nigeria. This is years before Boko Haram became as Haram as they have now become. Spends 2 years in training with Boko Haram in the western parts of Nigeria. Gets into management operations, gets caught in Nigeria. But as a Kenyan, shipped out, brought back to Kenya, put in jail. Nobody now trusts this guy, he's an extremist, it's a big problem. In jail, he discovers entrepreneurship. Does his time, comes out of jail in Kenya now, gets back to his slum, and now no longer looks for a job. He says, what is the business that I can do sitting here? They have a problem open defecation in Kenya as we have in this country. So he says, why don't I set up a community toilet service and let people contribute and also include my cost to the contribution. Gets a couple of kids involved and it begins a concept of community toilet on that street for that community. Finds that there are 8 tribes that live in that slum. And these tribes don't talk to each other, much like in our country. So he actually builds a complex himself with his friends, paid for by the communities in a way that addresses their social issues. Follow me a little bit. Like I told you, I'm rather speak with time, but I somehow get to the point. Builds a toilet complex that meets the requirements of his society. Comprehensive, right? All 8 tribes. Discovers that actually humans speak up along with other waste of the slums makes great digestive juices for energy, produces energy. Methane smells, gets a smell removing agent and supplies methane. Now they don't buy gas, which is more expensive. They recycle their excreta, they bought methane. He finds fighting methane to be a dangerous job. At least some village, a bonfire, hardcore fire, or whatever happened. So he builds a cooking complex above the toilet complex. But now he has redesigned the toilet complex because he's got a much better idea than that. He's now got 10 people. He was 1 plus 2, he's now 1 plus 10. He's 11 member of operation. He feels he should price these services. So he moves away from contribution to pricing of service. And he begins to think about how we can build value in this community. So now, the final product is a toilet complex on the ground floor, because old people, for example, find it difficult to climb up and down. Again, for all the 8 communities, separate design. Below in the basement is a methane producing gas factory. The gas goes up, couple of floors, and the cooking area, 12 different areas for people to cook. People can come there, buy their provisions, go to a kitchen they can rent for the hour, buy appointment, cook for the family, go back. The methane from the basement has come to the second floor. Between that and the toilet complex is the bathing complex and washing complex and a bunch of other stuff. Above that is the provision store. Then above that is the marriage convention hall. It's today a profitable business. I met him because I was one of the early investors. I made tons of money in this guy. I'm very proud to say to you that he will be listed on the New York Stock Exchange in under 5 years from today. What is the lesson that we have to understand from this? The lesson is very straightforward. We will not be able, as an economy, to produce the jobs that are required to absorb all of you coming out of college. We need entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs have only one capacity. Forget the idea, forget the hunger to make money and not to make money. They only have one distinguishing character, which is an unending willingness to take risks. To fail. To fail, to keep failing, till that one success takes place. And if that success fails, then to stand up again and go back on the road. And that is what we need as an economy. So let me put the 3 filters I talked about so far to the premises. Number 1, I think we need a dramatic change in the way we govern ourselves, in the way we see our economy, in the way we look at the various discussions taking place in regulatory terms or otherwise, in governance terms or otherwise, in communities and otherwise. We need a dramatic change because ICT is now the ruling paradigm of the 21st century, and we have internalized this yet. If I was asking Rajesh and Rajesh, what is the curriculum of the Gokhale Institute from 81 to 2015? It doesn't change very much, from what I can make out. The world has changed. but the curriculum hasn't changed very much. And I suspect it's because your professors haven't changed very much. And I suspect that's because the university expectations haven't changed very much. And I suspect that your parents haven't changed very much, and they have some very conventional notions of what kind of jobs you should get. And you're now 21, 23 years of age, and I can guarantee that most of you want a conventional job, where less than 1% of the jobs in the 21st century are going to come from. 99% of the jobs are going to come from unconventional sources compared to 2015 jobs. So you are unprepared to actually go and look for a job. And even if you get a job, the probability that you will be successful in that context, in the context of the fact that there are going to be such wonderful different other opportunities, means that you have less than a 10% chance of making good. Think about it. That's the rest of the one. You've got to change. You've got to keep up with the times. It's extremely scary. It's highly risky, but you won't have a choice. Premise number 2. If you have anything that even begins to look like an understanding of the dynamics of ICT, begin to think of career in that area as an economist. And a little later I will tell you what I think we should be doing as economics. And number 3, you've got to begin to redefine the way in which we define risks. I run a very successful infrastructure and finance company. I'm the CEO, so which means I can come to office every morning and I can see whether I have a day job or not. I'm the most fireable guy going in the system. And that's fine. But I have a very simple adage that I tell all my colleagues who join me. If you have to take a decision in your job, most people in a job with a salary, with a wife at home or a husband at home, with kids, have to worry about having an income that comes every month. And therefore, they do not want to take risks. In the kind of company that we represent, we have to take risks all the big time, big risks. Somebody mentioned GIPE. That's a joint venture between IFS and the government of Gujarat. They're actually born in a discussion that we had with Mr. Modi in 2004. Begin to take risks, calibrate your appetite. The adage I tell my colleagues is very simple. Please take a decision. If it goes bad, whoever makes you accountable, please tell them, I authorize you to do it and I told you to do it. If it goes well, please take 100% of the credit for yourself. So if I remove the cost of not taking decisions completely, and you don't take a decision, then you have to account to me and I'll fire you. It's as simple as that. But for God's sake, take decisions, take risks. Let them fire me. I don't worry about these things. You worry about it, blame me for the decision. If it's gone bad, if it's good, keep it. That is a new kind of capital, which cannot be given to you in form of remuneration or in terms of financial capital. So my last premise, which I want to play with you for economic infrastructure growth in that sense, is we have to change the notion of capital. For too long, have we been subject to looking at a Bill Gates or a Warren Buffett as great investors? I don't think they're particularly great investors. They're very opportunistic. The great investors were ones who built a technology into an industry into jobs, or jobs into an economy. Perhaps economies which drove the whole world's growth for further growth. These are the big investors. I guarantee you that you haven't heard of the top 10 investors defined where to start. They are the ones who have given all of our parents the job that they had in their life. Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they haven't done a fantastic job, or built great companies, or invested very smartly. But it is no longer relevant because it's a paradigm that belonged to the manufacturing world. and the communication world. And let me explain this a little bit for you. We no longer can drive economies on the basis of maximizing returns on capital. It's defined as financial capital. I know this is an anathema. I made this speech in another forum and I was criticized quite roundly for it. But I will persist. We have to redefine capital. And I'm saying, giving you an environment in which you can take risks, take decisions, and look at the result of it, and get you the strength to get up from a mistake and go on, to not worry about failures, ascribe almost a zero value in terms of capital to failures, is an incredibly important form of capital. And the jobs of the 21st century are not going to come from defining capital as conventionally understood, but only going to come if they are defined in the manner that is said. Think about it. A loss-making company in the IT world can get valuations which are unthinkable in the real world. Why? Because of the eyeballs? Because you've created a concept? Because you've taken a concept to the market and got eyeballs? Think about it. Why would somebody want to put real capital, which is conventionally defined, on those numbers when there is no line of sight of making money for the next 10 years, as conventionally estimated? So put all this together. What does it say about infrastructure, growth, prospects in India, and what is the vision going forward? We face some very serious challenges. In 1991, when all of us began working in infrastructure, it was called commercial infrastructure in 1988 or 89. And at that time, all infrastructure was to be built by government. People thought it was their birthright to get a road, water, electricity, telecommunications, or whatever it was. We all know the situation in 1988. You stood in queues to get ration cards, you stood in queues to get gas, you waited for years to get a car, you waited for years to get a telephone, you had to call the operator and book a trunk call, you wanted to go through in 4 hours, you called it a lightning call, all kinds of stuff was happening in those days. Commercialization of infrastructure as a concept had not been as yet established in this country. And yet IFS was put together by the Central Bank of India, HDFC, UPI, to look at commercialization of infrastructure. And they got people like me to come in from our backgrounds. I was that time working in SAS for 3 years, getting quite bored looking at which promoters telling me they wanted more money to build more factories to make more money. That cycle didn't really appeal to me. I'm looking for a way out. And in those days, of course, like all of you also, looking for jobs. I wanted the ICSC monitor, I wanted my performance bonuses, I wanted my salary, I wanted the respect that society gives you because you drive in a fancy car, all that stuff. And then from the IFS, it is given a capital of 6 crores and told to build and commercialize India's infrastructure. 1991 happens, and for 2 years, I would go from government to government, community to community, arguing a simple thesis that unless you decide to pay for a service, you will not get service. And as long as you don't pay for a service, you can't hold the service provider accountable. So stop subsidies. Stop delegating the amount of money to pay for services. Pay for services. 1990, as you can imagine, was very popular. Nobody really wanted to ask me to speak like this. And it was an alien concept. And I still remember going across this country, from village to village, society, community to community, state governments, municipalities, central government, no takers. World Bank, for example, was public sector. ADP was public sector. I was one of those minority guys, considered to be quite a mad guy. 91 happens, India goes bankrupt. We have less than 1 week's report in terms of FX. We pledged gold. And the argument then in government changed. A government officer with a mandate to build infrastructure builds infrastructure. But his equation before 91 was, I'll wait for cheap or no-cost money from government, budgetary resources, instead of taking high-cost commercial resources. Post 91, that equation changed. It was no budgetary resources to money from the private sector, commercial money. So it was not about waiting for the cheap money to come. There was no money in that box. The money, if at all was available, was in this box. We did a lot of work to get this money to work for us in infrastructure terms. And then I was saying, you know, I got bags of money at 6 crores in my bank account, and as my capital. And I had this huge mandate to build India's infrastructure on commercial basis. So we finally, after about 2 years of work, managed to actually get a mandate in 1991 December. Digvijay Singh was then the Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh. I got 11.5 kilometer village road to make it an industrial road of 2 lanes with what was called the high level bridge across the river, complete more than a river, which I would jump across. But I got a project as little bits on a toll road basis, little bits. We got a 3-page concession agreement between the government of Madhya Pradesh and IFS that said they're building this road of 11.5 kilometers along with a high level bridge across the river Gambhir. And we're going to charge tolls. And the tolls are going to be the following. For cars, it will be 1 buck, and for cycles, it will be 2 bucks, and so on and so forth. Both the government of Madhya Pradesh and IFS made every conceivable problem and mistake that you could possibly think on that one project. Thank God, 11.5 kilometers. I went to my board, and my board said, how much money can you lose? And I still remember the project cost was 2 crores. So I told my board, we can lose 2 crores. We invest 2 crores, we lose 2 crores. And we're an infrastructure company, direct invest, so we began. In 1991 to 2001, we moved from 11.5 kilometers to 200 kilometers. 200 kilometers in 10 years. Nothing that I would call a great success by any imagination whatsoever for a country of our size and its needs. 2001 to 2015, we now have 27,000 kilometers. And everybody, bar none, everybody has to pay tolls. Me too. Our roads are the finest in this country by Palestine. And we have spent the last 6 years in very intense work on how you can drive 150 kilometers and be lower accident rates than any other stretch in this country. At this point in time, after 6 years work, we are still just 5% less than other stretches on average. 5% less. By the end of this decade, by 2020, the target is that we will be a full 50% safer than any other road in this country, and I include village roads in this country. So, 2 things emerge. We can grow to scale, we can build quality, we can price it and get people to pay for it, and people can hold you accountable because if they pay your price for service, I effectively converted a road project into a quality toothpaste. So I have a team that builds roads, I have a team that markets it to the community that has to use this road, and I have a team that makes sure it's financially viable. 4 years ago, I discovered that I built a road and my whole universe, because that's what the analysts want to see. It's a listed company in the capital markets. Analysts want to see you earning quarter-on-quarter returns on investments. So the team that works on the project is also mandated, rightly so, to be focused on the damn road, make more money, get more people to use it, figure out ways of making more money on the road so that we get returns to investors. Investors are happy, bankers are happy, government is happy, community is also happy because they're the road after all. We are happy as sponsors. What have we lost? About 6-7 years ago, I began thinking of this problem, and I could not help feel that we were losing something in all of this. Everybody seemed to be happy. So what was it that we were losing? And it occurred to me a couple of years after that. That what we were losing, and thanks to my Kenyan friend who built this business, what we were losing is the value of the enterprise that has been invested and paid from a societal point of view. What is that value? In economics, I'm assuming all the study economics, it's called externalities. We have not understood as a country, as a company, as individuals, as academia, as policymakers, regulators, the value of this externality in designing projects that maximize externality but do not necessarily have to maximize return on capital. And that's when the realization dawned on me that we're defining projects the wrong way in this country. We now work in 22 countries across the world, and in these 22 countries, I can guarantee you, they also have defined it the wrong way. So it's not our government is not unique, our system is not unique. So what is it that's changed that we need to understand when we come to infrastructure and growth? And what has changed is the notion of what I'm going to call a social frontier. We don't define a social frontier around our investment decisions. We don't define a social frontier around our infrastructure asset creation exercise. We don't define a social frontier in the context of a factory that we build, or a power station, or telecommunications, or transmission grids. We do not do these things. So we get some pretty stupid, very stupid project designs. The Department of Public Health doesn't talk to the Department of Environment, so doesn't talk to the Department of Water. So the Department of Water has a mandate for bringing water into the city. It does not have the mandate to design the distribution network around that city. That's the municipality's job. The Department of Health and Environment are not concerned. So in city after city across this country, we have low-hanging fruits of designing projects, keeping in mind externality as the overriding outcome, and managing to implement assets far more creatively and manage them much more creatively. We are beginning to do it in IFS. It's a hard task to even get my colleagues to accept that they have to veer away from maximizing profits to maximizing the social frontier benefits from the project, in the design of the project. In the last 100 projects we've done, it increases project cost between 3 and 5%. I believe, based on my accounting system from an accounts point of view, that it improves return on investments 200%. Because the risk-weighted average return on the investment significantly improves. The absolute return does not. I tried to change the procurement policy of many government committees from the way in which they tender it out to what I'm calling the life cycle cost of a project. So the government is quite happy to tender out and give L1 a 10 crore contract to improve the road from, let's say, the main road. Incidentally, that restaurant still there, the one at the bottom. Huh? Rupali. They still serve the best Salana vadas. There you go. Okay. So if they spend 10 crores government on an L1 basis from Rupali restaurant to the highway, but in the next monsoon it gets washed away, then again 10 crores. Every year they will pay 10 crores. I don't know, I cannot tell you what the 10 crores represents in terms of income to the system. But it's a decent amount of income, it's an annuity from the system's point of view. But think of it differently. What if I chose somebody who says that I will give you a road from Rupali to your definition up to the highway for 30 crores, not 10 crores, 30 crores. I guarantee that the ridership quality of this road will remain at a minimum of 220 or 2,500 parts per whatever it's called for 30 years. I'll hand over to you free of cost with the residual life at the same standard for at least 7 years. And I will have spent 30 crores of that. I'll have spent at least 7 to 8 crores in building jobs in the vicinity of this road, defined as 1.5 kilometers. Today, if you want this proposition to the government, they'll reject it. Today, in the 21st century, our government, any government in this country, actually probably in the world. But just think about it. What have we lost? You won't get 30 crores. You won't get a road that's going to last for 30 years, not even for 1 year, or maybe maximum 2 years. And you don't get jobs. And you have no nationality even mapped out. So you have no clue whether it's worth doing this or not. You're not going to data to assess this. So we are completely clueless after independence today as to the impact a dollar has on our economy in terms of job creation, in terms of productivity, in terms of utilization of our native resources as a country. And we still ban numbers. This is the shift that we need to see. So we built roads from 1991. We built India's first private water supply project. We built the world's largest common effluent treatment plant with zero discharge, which means not a drop of water gets goes back into the environment. It gets reused all the time. We built India's first waste energy plant, which is what's called Euro Commission or Euro non-Commission compliant. Essentially, we take municipal waste and burn it and produce electricity. It releases very dangerous chemicals which are carcinogenic, things like dioxins. To be able to eliminate those dioxins is an extremely expensive process. Because we thought of it as externalities, we figured a way of doing it in a way in which we could afford to do it. We invested in it and it's been commissioned in end of this month, early next month. It takes 50% of Delhi's waste and converts it to electricity. 100% of the waste cannot be recycled, but we've got to pretty damn close to 100%, we are 95%. Less than 5% finds its way to a dump site. And then we did a commercial transaction. I gave subsidies and all that getting paid by government. I see people paying for it. If you go to Mumbai, which is an area around Bombay, to one end, it is one of Asia's largest dump sites. Till about 5 years ago. If you go there today, I define the pyramid of the dump site. It's a park. It's a green park. The municipality of Bombay gets close to 20 crores a year in carbon credits. It doesn't pay out massive amounts of money. But the most important externality we did not capture. Property prices on Dubai went up from something close to 10 rupees a square foot on a molecular basis to close to 150 rupees a square foot in under 3 years. Most people who live around dump sites are people who do not have access to better housing, who don't have good incomes, who have no choice but to live in a filth. That model is now 4 years old, and not a single municipality across this country has actually gone and seen Gorai with the point of view of making sure it happens in their neighborhood. I remember every community you can think of across this country with pictures, with a process map saying, do it for your neighborhood. Not a single community has come forward to do it in our neighborhood. Not a single community. We still go and make bridges, for us it's a business. But not a single community has put forward and said, we want to convert this dump-yard into this stuff that is showed up. Why? You cannot take infrastructure to growth unless we capitalize public opinion in a manner that's willing to take risks, pay for services, and look at externalities in the design of projects. Unless you're willing to pay, we do not get a service. And the outcome is the gross perverse reality that we have in this country. 70% of Bombay lives in slums, 30% live in titled houses. Many people argue that out of 30% of titled houses, more than 90% actually are slums, but vertical. Yet, the biggest argument we have in the municipal legislature is how do we not pay for services? So you get bad water, we don't get our waste picked up on time, we have dirty streets, we don't have lighting, we have crime rising. We have young people from across the country, mostly Bihar, coming into Mumbai as security staff working 4 hours to 5 hours a day, only to do what? Nothing. Because they're mostly sleeping. They're exhausted. They get paid from 2,000-3,000 rupees a month, which in Bombay is nothing. So they need multiple jobs. And they're exhausted. Our society is perverse. So if you want to talk about infrastructure and growth, we have to start from here. We start from here, which is externalities, we design our projects, we pay for it, we take it forward. We have to, as of date, build the largest portfolio of roads in the country. We don't have the largest portfolio of waste management. I think we already have the biggest in the country. We take waste to energy, we take waste to compost and goes into farm plants, organic fertilizers and that kind of stuff. We recycle construction debris, which is a typical problem of all municipalities. It's called C&D waste. We pick it up, we recycle it into products like aggregates, pavement blocks, building materials, all kinds of stuff. And we basically recycle 95% of all waste, municipal waste. I actually don't think the problem is infrastructure. I don't think our problem is growth. I don't think our problem is capital. I think our problem in this country, is a lack of imagination and a lack of responsibility at the individual level. And communities do not take responsibility in this country. We are permitting very perverse, grotesquely distorted outcomes for reasons which are just beyond my understanding. We need to fix that. Unless we fix that, I don't really see a future of growth in this economy, which will be responsive to what this society needs to see for itself. The governments have taken fantastic steps. So we have an actively engaged government for infrastructure commercialization, focused on investments in infrastructure, both public and private. We have legislative frameworks in place that permit all this to happen. Land acquisition is an outcome of a perverse thought. It's not a problem in itself. We have it as IFS till date had a problem of land acquisition, either in terms of compensation or willingness to pay for or accept the amount they are willing to pay for land. There are many different ways in which you can take care of the issues that are typical of land. So I don't think that's a dead bogey in my view. It's a bogey because people want to hit the fundamental problem. The fundamental problem is that in a society where access to opportunity is highly regulated, when you have an asset like land, you see this as your one lottery ticket out of poverty. That cannot be done in the way under a government. It's an insane way of trying to make it happen and make right something that can't be fixed in this fashion. Let me continue with another point. In the last 5 years, working in infrastructure, we as a company decided that one of the big opportunities from our point of view, and the big challenges across the world, was skilled manpower. So we began something called IFS skills some 6 years ago. And we made many mistakes again, we moved together, and today we have now skilled and put in employment 1.5 million kids across India. Which could have 1 million people. But we skilled and put in place 1.5 million kids. Today, Germany and Australia has certified our centers, and I think only 2 centers, one in Delhi, one in Chennai, as being eligible to skill for certain categories of labor that they need in their countries. So if IFS skills provides that certificate, that kid gets a job either in Australia, I think Singapore, Australia, and Germany. This is high-end welding, coding, programming kind of stuff, all kinds of stuff. But we have moved a fair bit. What is missing is entrepreneurship. We just don't prepare our kids to go into entrepreneurship. We don't understand that entrepreneurship is not about capital, or a good idea, or efficiency. There are so many different things. I personally feel for entrepreneurship, only one real skill has to be developed in the kid, which is the ability to figure out what's a failure and then to keep trying. That persistence, that perseverance is all that we have to give an entrepreneur. And if you can pick a little bit resistance, it will take time, it's a very painful process. You might commit suicide, who knows, all these are all risks of society not to bear. But that is the kind of talent we need to unleash in this country to generate the jobs we need for the quantity. Let me just conclude. I'm not sure I directly address the issue. I want to give a different perspective because I'm the head of the Open Institute. I'm hoping to get that done with the soon. I'd like to be able to create a program in GoPay, which is data driven, but which helps us conceptualize infrastructure growth and entrepreneurship in this manner. Now to bring not necessarily kids like you who have no work experience, but people in jobs, with people like you without jobs, put them into this program and then begin to see what comes out of it across the 100 projects that we do in a year. So almost like a sort of internship, academic internship program, maybe 1 or 2 years. But when you leave, you don't get a certificate unless you achieve in whatever you do thereafter something that this faculty, which will be looking at it, will accept as worthy of being an output of this program. So you get 6 months or 1 year after that. So let's say 1 year intensive program with a 1 year internship, even with a certificate. Early days, we try to figure it out. So let me conclude by saying 2 things. The first is that over the next 5 years, we're going to see, whether we like it or not, close to $400 to $500 billion of investments in infrastructure. I don't think you'll see too many smart cities. I don't like the word smart, but you're not going to see too many smart cities because those are very long-term initiatives. Like I told you, we are building one with the government of Gujarat. It will take some time, but it will generate 1 million new jobs. That level of smartness needs a lot of planning, a lot of detailing, a lot of capital of a type to be made available for it to be realized. We don't have the kind of patience as a country for our cities. So I'm not very hopeful that our cities are going to be smart. Will they be less unsmart than they are today? I'm hoping so. So we can get BRTS put in place, we can have solar lamp lights put in place, we can have some more efficiency in tax collections, we can do those kinds of premium stuff in process. Smart will become slightly less smart, and less unsmart, in my definition of it. To be truly smart, a city has to do 3 things. It has to define its role in creating employment. That's a smart city. So it constantly reinvents itself to be able to create employment. It has to have a view of what Pune should look like in 30 years from now, from an economic point of view, from a social point of view, from a political point of view. And it has to influence it in the design and planning of the city. That is smart. It has to be able to be globally competitive in terms of productivity. Not a single Indian city can match anywhere in the world. And I include in this statement almost every country in the world, including Pakistan. You do not have global productivity standards in our cities. We have to get there. And the last point, where do we have public spaces in our cities? We need really nice public spaces. Not garbage sites, right? Not smaller sites, public spaces. We don't have public spaces in any of our urban settlements. So smart city requires that. GIPE, we have a good chance of mimicking a smart city because it's green field. So we've got 850 acres of land, and we're building this incredible complex. We've got the rules changed to have a 5-kilometer radius around GIPE to mimic GIPE. It can't be GIPE, but can mimic GIPE. So GIPE should become a CBD of this larger area. The urban form is very different to what we use here. I genuinely believe land is a scarce commodity and has to be priced at the highest level possible. And therefore, people designing cities must do it on the smallest scale possible. Because in a country like ours, we just don't have that kind of land. And therefore, it's a tall high rise. But we can't convert all of India to high rise, it's very tough. Correct? So, GIPE has a chance of working. But it's their litmus test. It's not that it builds a fabulous city. It's their litmus test. It will be a 1 million employment generator with public spaces and with global benchmark productivity standards. The last point I want to make, which I would leave with you, is that if you like this thought, So if any of the faculty asks you, what do you think about infrastructure, finance, growth, and entrepreneurship, tell them it's a fantastic idea. Thank you very much.
The floor is now open for questions, but due to shortage of time, we will only be taking 1 or 2 questions maximum. We request the volunteers to take the mic to the audience.
Thank you, sir. I was also an old student, probably 10 years younger to you here. And I must say it's a brilliant exposition of the problem. Typically, an economist talks about infrastructure, it's more about numbers and than about the attitude towards infrastructure. I think your point about internalizing externalities in our behavior is, I think, is a brilliant one. I just wanted to ask you, as a practicing banker, do we really have the funding? Is funding or is financing infrastructure a problem in this country?
No.
There is enough money for any kind of infrastructure. So the story about the government unable to find the necessary money to create infrastructure is not something that you believe.
No, I didn't say that. You said does infrastructure have a problem or constraint on financing? The answer is no. The current system is creating constraints which don't need to exist.
The spirit of the question is, are private initiatives realize the external or the public good nature of creation of the infrastructure?
No.
And do we have the money to fund such initiatives? Private. Look, the question is, if the government is not doing, and if the private, do not have the incentive or the ability to recognize externality benefits of infrastructure, who will fund it, and how does the money come?
So you will have infrastructure built in the way Mr. Government understands it. You will build railway stations, you will build railway tracks, you will build railway systems. I don't see that cycle being constrained by money per se. Although the vision of having, let's say, high-speed rails across this country, in 5 years, we realize we don't have that kind of money. Over 20 years, we realize I don't see a problem with that. So when I say I don't see a problem, I don't see a problem in that sense. What you don't see, whether it's in the private sector or in the government space or in academia, is the basis on which you can actually engage with the problem of internalizing the externalities into the design of products. This link has not even been phrased as a way of looking at it. And any attempt to make this link there's a lot of interest in keeping the status quo ante the way it is. So the linking of all this is not being seen as being material to the problems of raising the money required to build infrastructure or to implement projects, the land acquisition acts with a more responsive reality, etc. Those issues are getting precedence over this, whereas I think this should get precedence because this will create jobs, not these. And therefore, we need to get the center of alignment moving away from building infrastructure of the 20th century and the 19th century already to this. So I asked Suresh over the simple question once, and it's a good question to ask any minister because there's no answer to this. Is why do we want to build railway lines in this country? Can you please tell me how many railway trips are being made today because people are not understanding that they can communicate and transport goods and services electronically. We have 3D printing today. Outside Coimbatore is a polytechnic. The founder of that is an 80-year-old guy. I think he may be dead by now, but he was 80 when I met him, some 10 years ago, or 5 years ago. He had bought India's first 3D printer. A guy as aware as I am of these things and so interested in the subject, was not aware of the dimensions. And in that fellow's home, in a separate place in his garden, he had a 3D printer for which he manufactured for me a cycle in 4 hours. And I drove the cycle in his yard. How many cycles are being today manufactured and sent across this country by railway routes or by trucks? So why are we not responding as government and saying, I'm going to invest as railways 3D printers and give you a big discount on your railway tickets for all people going from your country in the railway systems because they reduce the load on my bank system. Now, I'm talking outlandish, yes, it is very outlandish. But unless you start thinking like this and optimizing on this basis and internalizing those expenses and design of programs, why do you want to raise $1 trillion for railways? For what? To build more railway lines? For whom? Europe has begun to reduce the width of their roads. They have more cars than we have. Why? Who in PWD who designs a road knows this? And if he knows it, what is he doing about the roads he's building? Sorry, I don't know if you answered the question.
Very much. Absolutely. Correct.
Thank you, sir. With this, we come to the close of the session. I would like to thank Mr. Hari Sankaran for his precious time and enlightening speech. Sir, as a token of gratitude, we would like to present you with a memento and a sampling, and a copy of Veritas for Nancy of the Student Securities Society of India at Conclave'15 Day2. Thank you, sir. We would now break for tea, but please be back here in the next 5 minutes because we will start with the next session where we have Professor Anil Gupta from Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, speaking on